Cart King, here I come. Hello, sports fans, sports collectors, and all hobbyists. Welcome to the Cart King Sports and Variety Show. I am your host, the Catman, Brian Cataquet, a.k.a. the Cart King. We are live on ABC's KMET 1490am.com, your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. I thank everyone for tuning in this morning. On the phone line, I welcome in a Kentucky sports legend. He played for the 1963 St. Louis Cardinals and was the player who replaced the great Stan Musial in Musial's last and final game at Wrigley Field. I welcome in Corky Withrow.
I just want to say to all my friends in Central City, hello.
Well, you're in the baseball record books, like I mentioned, for, replacing the great Stan Musial, and we'll get to that. But, Corky, in your state of Kentucky, like I mentioned, you are considered a sports icon. If you can, take us through your early journey in sports, playing both basketball then baseball.
Oh, I sure will. Well, I was born in Hyco, West Virginia, and my parents moved to Central City, Kentucky when I was about 4 years old. And I was raised there, and all you could hear was the Central City Golden Tide. It was the basketball team. It was a small town of about 5,000. There wasn't much to do except have one movie. And but basketball was the king at Central City, and Central City had a great record of basketball accomplishments throughout the whole career there. And I think at one time, Brian, Central City had the most wins of any team in the whole United States. And but I don't think it held up. They have consolidated now, and where there used to be 7 schools in the county where I'm from, there's only one there now. So, sports records and all. I used to go out, and it would cost me 25 cents to get in the basketball game, see Central City play, and people like, I'm sure the name Cliff Hagan will ring a bell with most people. He played here in Owensboro High School, and Central City played Owensboro, and I remember seeing Cliff Hagan play when I was in about the 7th grade. But the one thing that we had to look forward to in Central City was to play for the Golden Tide, and that was the mark of success for every young man in Central City. So, fortunately for me, Dale Musgish, which was the coach at the time, gave me a shot at it, and hopefully some of the records I set will show that I did succeed in playing basketball. But as I grew older, baseball became a passion with me, and I could see it back in those days when Joe DiMaggio, and I'm calling out some names now that some older folks, Ted Williams, Mickey Mantle, and some of those folks turned into be my icon. And my brother and I used to lay in bed and listen to St. Louis Cardinals, Harry Carey, Gus Mancuso, before Jack Buck took over. So I lived the dream of being a baseball player, and my dream did come true.
And, Corky, many people listening may not know. I mean, you had the distinct honor of playing both, with Wilt Chamberlain and Stan Musial in the same year. Is that correct?
I may be the only person that you ever talked to that played with Wilt Chamberlain and Stan Musial. This all happened around 1961, Brian, when I was in Riverside, California. I get a call from Chuck Taylor. I don't know if anybody's ever had on a pair of Converse tennis shoes or not, but Chuck Taylor's name is on every pair. He called me and asked me he said, "Now, if we draft you, would you come to Hershey, Pennsylvania, with Philadelphia?" I guess it was Warriors at that time, wasn't it? But so I said, "Yeah, I'll go." It sounded interesting.
So, playing with Will, against Will Chamberlain or with Will Chamberlain, how is that experience like? What do you recall most about that experience?
Well, you remember Tom Gola was also on that team. Maybe people don't recognize the name, but he was an All-American. But being around for Will Chamberlain, for some reason, Brian, he took a liking to me. And to tell the truth, after practice, we would go out in his pink convertible at the time, and he would drink an orange juice. And I hate to say this over the phone to some of my Christian friends, but I would drink a beer and he'd drink orange juice. But he was so much fun to be around. One thing note here is that it's unbelievable that the Philadelphia Warriors stayed in the YMCA in Hershey, Pennsylvania. That I can't see any of those NBA teams now practicing and then living in an in YMCA. Can you?
No, I can't. But let's get. But let's get to how did the Cardinals hear about Corky Withrow?
Well, they had when I was with Austin in the Texas League, we used to play in Tulsa and in Austin also. But I loved the hit in Tulsa. That was the greatest hitting park in the whole league or I've ever been in. And I hit the ball over the fence a lot in Tulsa. I hit the ball hard, and I was, and then they came to Austin, and I guess the best pitcher, I can't remember his name. He was big, threw hard, and I hit one over the center field wall in Austin off of him, which was the only ball ever hit over the center field wall in Austin, Texas. The wind was bad there, and you really didn't get to hit that long ball the way you wanted. And then the next time up, I hit one off of him in left center field off the scoreboard. So I'm sure those had something to do with the fact that the Cardinals did get me, and I was tickled to death that they did.
Yep. So 1963, you're playing for the Cardinals. I mean, a team who had, which had the great Bob Gibson, Tim McCarver, and so many other great athletes. I believe Ken Boyer was on the team, etc. Talk about.
Don't leave out Stan Musial now, Ryan.
No, not at all. I'm going to get to Stan Musial because you are the man who replaced him. But great Stan Musial. How were those teammates? How did those teammates treat you? Did they take you in? They welcomed you in?
Oh my gosh! I never met such fine gentlemen in my life. That was a day in infamy that you've heard so much about. They woke me up at 6:30 in Dallas, Texas. I was with the Denver Bears at the time in the Pacific Coast League, and I get a call about 6:30 in the morning, and the Cardinals had bought me, and I was supposed to report to Pittsburgh that day. But as I said before, that back then in 1963. There was very few flights from one city to the next, a long flight. So I had to catch maybe 3 or 4 flights to get to Pittsburgh. And I got there about 8:30. Got there about 6:30. Got to the dressing room. They had my uniform. It was amazing to see Withrow across the Cardinal uniform. That like floored me. But I did get the uniform on and got out there in about the 8th inning, I think. And I sat on the bench, and the very first person that came up to me and stuck his hand out was Stan Musial. And I thought, Lord, this has got to be heaven. I've died, and I don't know it. You know, it was the most amazing day of my life. And Ken Boyer come up and says, my gosh, they grow them big in Kentucky, don't they? And then Kurt Flood, which all the gentlemen I ever met, Kurt Flood was probably one of the greatest. So they did welcome me with open arms. So it was wonderful, Brian. I can't put it in words to tell the truth about it, but I live with that memory every day of my life.
Man, I mean, Corky, Stan Musial, a 24-time All-Star, 3-time World Series champion, 3-time MVP, 7-time National League batting champion. I mean, if that was me, I'd be shaking in my pants, sweating all over, being in front of Stan the Man Musial.
Well, you described it exactly right. I had an experience with Stan Musial back when I was about 7 or 8 years old. My father and Mom and Dad moved to Hammond, Indiana. Dad worked in the steel mill. So we went to Wrigley Field when I was a young man, and my brother and I. And as a matter of fact, the Cubs was playing the Cardinals, and I saw Musial play. But after the game, my uncle and aunt had driven over. They thought my mom and dad was taking us back to Hammond. And my mom and dad thought my aunt and uncle was taking us back to Hammond. So my brother and I sat out in front of Wrigley Field for 2 or 3 hours waiting for somebody to come get us. Finally, we decided we was going to hitchhike back to Hammond, Indiana, but the guy picked us up in a convertible and said, "Where are you boys going?" And he took us to a police station, and Mom and Dad eventually showed up back and picked us up. So I did see Stan Musial play when I was a very young man, and got to meet him, and it was just a wonderful experience for me.
I mean, how about that, Corky? I mean, you and Musial will always be linked together because you were the person, the athlete, the outfielder, who replaced him at Wrigley Field. Take us through that game. Now, how did you get take us through that experience. What happened? The manager said you're going out to replace Musial?
Johnny Keane was the manager, and I think Stan went to bat in the 5th inning and top of the 5th, okay? And so anyway, Johnny Keane says, "Well, Corky, you're going out and replace Stan in left field." And I thought, well, somebody may have a gun or something out there in the left field bleachers. But I did go out in left field, and that was a real experience, Brian, because at the time they had what they called the bleacher bums. I don't know if anybody remember those or not. And in Chicago, but man, they started throwing half-eaten hot dogs, popcorn, anything they could get their hands on at me, and they were hollering, "We didn't come see you play; we come to see Musial." So they littered left field, and they actually had to stop the game and clean up left field before we could play. Nobody had ever heard of Corky Withrow, or they had paid their good bucks to come in to see Stan Musial. So that was an experience I'll never forget either, Brian.
I mean, unbelievable, enormous shoes to fill. And you mentioned they were throwing hot dogs. They were throwing hot dogs at you, or what happened there?
They were throwing it at me. Yeah, they didn't want to see me. I was nobody. They had paid their good bucks to come see Stan Musial. I mean, whether Stan Musial did anything, whether he caught a fly ball, got a base hit, that didn't matter. That was Stan Musial. That was their reason for being at the ballpark, I'm sure, because they had that was the last day he was in the Wrigley Field. And they had a going away special before the game. In other words, they had told Stan Musial what he had meant to the Chicago Cubs. You know, they gave them the trophy and all this kind of stuff. There's a big ceremony before the game, and here is some nobody running out in his place, and it about had made everybody that stands mad, if you'll know the truth about it.
Amazing. And those 63 Cardinals, they finished in second place. I mean, it had some team. Like I mentioned, Dick Groat was on the team. Did you get along with Dick Groat?
As a matter of fact, I did, because there was a steel company here in Owensboro that Dick Groat had part of it. He was one of the managers in some kind of steel company, and he had been to Owensboro. As a matter of fact, Dick Groat played basketball at Duke University, and he came into Owensboro and played basketball at what they call the Sports Center here. It's the big basketball court. And as a matter of fact, he scored 50 points here in the Sports Center against a Kentucky Wesleyan basketball team. And, we had a lot to say about that. I didn't know him personally then, but we talked about Owensboro and had some conversation about him being part owner of this steel company here in Owensboro. But he was a great guy.
I mentioned Dick Groat because, as everyone may know, National League MVP 1960, 8-time, All-Star, etc. What about Bob Gibson? Any personal reflection on that you recall or have with Bob Gibson?
If people think of Bob Gibson as a hard nose, and on the mound he was. You didn't want to dig your spikes in too deep if he was pitching, because the first thing you know, you'd be on your back. Everybody had so much respect for Bob Gibson. He was such a nice guy, and as a matter of fact, he did have a sense of humor, because I got to know Bob Gibson when we were in a homestand there. We stayed in a hotel there in St. Louis, and every morning it seemed that we both ate breakfast at the same time, and he would always invite me to sit down with him to have breakfast. And we talked basketball because Bob Gibson was a great basketball player at Creighton University. I don't know if people know that, but he was I don't think he was first team All-American basketball at Creighton, but anyway, what I remember about Bob Gibson, we used to make fun. The biscuits were really great, Brian, but they were small. They were bite-sized. I think we eat about 1.5 pounds of biscuits during our breakfast. But he did have a nice sense of humor, and we talked basketball. And I can't, for the life of me, think of one person on the whole St. Louis Cardinals squad that wasn't just a gentleman and a great friend. But what I want to do, if you have time, is to give you some. I noticed that Soto just signed what was $756 million contract.
Unbelievable.
For 15 years. Unbelievable. Well, let me tell you what Stan Musial made his last year. Okay, Stan Musial made $66,000 his last year in professional baseball. Kurt Flood made $13,700 playing big league baseball. So this, and most of the salaries are around $10,000. So it's come a long way since we played baseball.
It has, and it has, and I respect you guys so much because you played during the golden age, the golden era of baseball, where I believe you guys were the true competitors out there. You played, you earned your money out there, no question about it. I want to mention this book that's written about you. It's called Uncorked. Tell us how this book came into existence.
Well, I had some friends here. They got together and was arguing really about me being in the Kentucky High School Hall of Fame. And one guy said I was, one guy said I wasn't. So they checked it, and they noticed that I hadn't made the Kentucky High School Basketball Hall of Fame. And so they got together, put together these statistics and things about this book, and eventually I did wind up in the Kentucky High School Hall of Fame. But they wrote this book, Brian. It's 288 pages. It chronicles just about everything that happened to me from day one on to the end of my career. And I sold a bunch of copies. We got a bunch of copies, had some autograph sessions here around. But to me, the most thrilling thing is that the book actually sells at Cardinal Stadium, and they have it on a rack up there. I don't know how many they sold. I never got anything from it. But anyway, on that rack, which is just unbelievable, was my book was on the top shelf, and Tony LaRusso's book was on the second shelf. So
is that right?
Yeah, I thought that was real funny. But anyway,
wow.
Like I say, Brian, it chronicles the whole Corky Withrow thing. If anybody's interested, I mean, you can actually write me here that, and what is it, 3850 Bordeaux Loop South, Owensboro, Kentucky. It's $24.95 if anybody's interested. Let me tell you how to spell Bordeaux, okay? It's BORDEAUX. Bordeaux Loop South, Owensboro, Kentucky, 42303. If they're interested, it's, like I say, $24.95. And also, Brian, if I may, is I have an array of 8x10s in the Cardinal uniform with beautiful pictures. I've got some 4x6s and some smaller ones. If anybody'd be interested, they could write me at that address. I could write them back a price list that I have. So, and so it's just a thing there's some beautiful pictures. It's good color, not a me, okay.
Yeah, so the book is called, I just want to mention the book again. It's called Uncorked, Kentucky Sports Legend, Corky Withrow. That's the title of the book. Didn't you say Henry Aaron had a copy?
Yes, Henry Aaron. I sent Henry Aaron. He wrote me and wanted a copy of the book, so I sent him one down to Atlanta. Yeah, And
Wow.
there's other people that have the book. Well, I'm trying to. Forgive me for forgetting a name, okay? But I'll come up with it. Yeah, let me mention this too. It was the book was written by a couple of fellows named Sherrill Williams, Charles Thurman, and Rick Ubay, and they did a terrific job. I mean, it's a beautiful reader book. I've had so many people that are great with it, but my favorite is this picture with me and Stan Musial, September the 7th, 1963, his last day in Pittsburgh in Ford Field. I've got a picture of he and I together. It's color. It's a 4x6, and I've got all kind of nice stuff if anybody's interested, Brian.
Amazing stuff, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an image, a picture of that book, of your book, on my radio show page so the listeners can take a look at the book as well. Now, I have a few minutes left. Didn't you say Mickey Mantle was your idol and you got to meet him? Is that correct?
Boy, you hit the nail right on the head there. Everything I ever did in baseball, Brian, I hit 212 home runs in minor league ball, and I never looked at the pitcher because that was what Mickey Mantle never embarrassed a pitcher after hitting a home run. So I lived the Mickey Mantle dream, okay? He was my man from day one.
Well, you sound fantastic. How old are you now, Corky?
I turned 87 Thanksgiving Day.
Oh, well, God bless you. You sound fantastic. It's an honor to have you. I really appreciate your time.
Well, it's an honor to. I just want to say to all my friends in Central City, hello, and God bless you all. And hey, Brian, thanks a lot for having me on. There's a lot that we've missed, and I'd like to sometime, if you ever get back this way, just let me know, okay?
Absolutely. You just heard from the 1963 St. Louis Cardinals, Corky Withrow. Until next week, happy collecting to all.